Let's blast a joint.
We smoke that kush, that kush, that kush.
Still loved Shell Pfeffer, and she would have never gone through with the murder plot. The targeted fiancé echoed the same sentiment, referring to the incident as Strom's mental drama, and proposing that instead of prison, she be sent to a mental health facility. Number 6, Colton Barnes. In July of 2020, a Nebraska man was arrested on charges of first-degree murder, animal cruelty, child abuse, and tampering with evidence. Colton Barnes and Kayla Matulka had gotten engaged in March and were due to get married mid-fall. The nature of the domestic argument that occurred at their Malmo home remains unclear, but at one point, Barnes was asked to leave the residence. By his own admission, it sent the victim a text message, which he then deleted from her phone, threatening to kick the door down. After regaining entrance to the home, Barnes forcefully and repeatedly stabbed his 27-year-old fiancée and her dog, a black Labrador named Diesel, before fleeing the premises. Both succumbed to their extensive injuries. Batulka had 2 children to whom Barnes would have become a stepfather. The murder scene was discovered by the victim's 11-year-old son, who then ran to a nearby home and asked a neighbor for help, telling him that he thought his mother was dead. A 911 call was placed at around 9:30 a.m. Footage from a surveillance camera pointed to Barnes as the main suspect, and he was arrested a few hours later. Upon being taken into custody, he told the officers, "I wish I could have stopped myself," and also claimed that he thought about taking his own life as well. He was held without bond at Saunders County Jail. In spite of the substantial evidence against him, Barnes pleaded not guilty. His trial is ongoing. Number 5, Dominic Evans. In January of 2019, an Englishman allegedly fell asleep behind the wheel and crashed his car, resulting in the death of his fiancée. Kaylee Gill and Dominic Evans, both in their early 20s, had been together since their early teens and planned to get married the following year. The couple had 2 children who were in the back seat at the time of the crash. They'd just returned from a family holiday to Egypt and were traveling on the M5 near Columpton, Devon. Their Nissan Juke was seen veering across the motorway before crashing into a lorry. 22-year-old Gill was the only one to be extracted from the wreckage in critical condition, as Evans and the children hadn't suffered serious injuries. The young woman was taken to Derriford Hospital, where she passed away 4 days later. Evans, who reportedly had no memory of the accident, subsequently appeared at Exeter Crown Court, where he admitted to causing death by careless driving. He was given a 12-month driving ban and a jail sentence of 8 months, suspended for 2 years. Number 4, Kendrick Akins. In early January of 2020, just days after proposing to his girlfriend, a Houston man shot and killed her, following an argument about car issues. Kendrick Akins and Dominic Jefferson, both in their 30s, had been dating for about 3 months before he proposed to her on New Year's Eve. Jefferson and an unnamed woman were outside the couple's home and getting ready to pick up the latter's boyfriend from work. Jefferson's car wouldn't start, and as Akins came outside to ask about the issue, his fiancée shouted at him not to touch her car. In the rapidly escalating argument, Akins reached for his gun. According to eyewitness reports, his fiancée dared him to shoot her. He then pointed the weapon at Jefferson's chest and fired a single round, killing her. A neighbor heard the gunshot and, as he approached the scene, encountered Jefferson, who fired once in his direction. The neighbor survived by diving into nearby bushes and playing dead, hoping that the shooter wouldn't return. Akins fled the scene after grabbing his fiancée's cell phone and was later arrested. He had 2 prior convictions in Harris County for aggravated assault and felon in possession of a weapon. Akins asked to be put in protective custody as the victim had brothers in the county jail and he feared retaliation. He was charged with murder and aggravated assault with a combined bond set at $225,000. Number 3, Philip Keller. In May of 2021, MMA fighter Philip Keller of Florida was arrested and charged with first-degree premeditated murder after shooting his fiancée while high on MDMA. 39-year-old Keller was known in the MMA community after competing under the Titan FC banner, where he suffered 3 losses from 2019 to 2020. He'd called 911 at around 11 a.m. to report that his girlfriend, Alicia Red, Campitelli was not breathing and that someone had possibly broken into their apartment. 35-year-old Campitelli, a well-known local piercing artist, was already dead as first responders arrived at the scene. She had been shot twice, and hours before Keller called 911, at least one resident reported hearing the sound of gunshots. Surveillance footage would show Keller making multiple withdrawals using Campitelli's debit card after he'd killed her. The fighter then called an acquaintance and shared details of the murder, including where he'd disposed of the gun. The acquaintance contacted investigators who set up a monitored phone call. Keller was recorded saying, "I killed her, bro," and went on to mention he was severely intoxicated at the time of the murder. After the authorities heard the confession, and as deputies were closing in on Keller, he attempted to evade arrest by jumping into a creek on Merritt Island, but was ultimately taken into custody. Today's topic was requested by Sal Denning. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2, Alexander Voronin. Mere days before their wedding, Russian man Alexander Voronin brutally murdered his fiancée, 26-year-old Marina Pankratova. She had already bought her wedding dress and was prepared to spend the rest of her life with the same man who had violently ended. In 2020, the woman's half-naked body was found at the Moscow apartment they shared, where Voronin had subjected her to what was reported as a 3-hour-long onslaught. Her face was disfigured and her skull was fractured by dozens of strikes with an unidentified object, suspected to have been the blunt part of an axe. Her limbs were covered in wounds, some of which had been inflicted by punches and kicks. Voronin's mother was the one who discovered the gruesome killing. In the ensuing investigation, CCTV footage showed the 25-year-old beating Pankratova before they got home, and no one else was seen entering the apartment prior to him leaving it. The police interviewed 5 of the man's former partners, all of whom claimed he'd been abusive. One woman reported that in a fit of rage, he tied her to a chair and threatened to throw her child out the window. Voronin, a travel agent, had initially tried to flee abroad, but was prevented from leaving Russia by pandemic travel restrictions. He was persuaded to surrender by his father, Nikolay, an ex-KGB security service officer. Voronin, who in court claimed that he didn't remember anything, was ultimately sentenced to 14.5 years in prison. Number 1, James Addy. In 2018, the body of Molly Watson was found on a gravel road in Monroe County, Missouri. She'd been shot, execution style, in the back of the head. In April of that year, she was supposed to marry her fiancé, James Addy, whom she'd been dating for 7 years. However, it would have been an illegal union, as Addy, a man in his 50s, was still married to Melanie, his wife of 23 years, with whom he shared a daughter. For years, he'd been living a double life, and his family was completely unaware of his 35-year-old fiancé's existence. Then, as he became a murder suspect, his family man facade unraveled. A blood-spattered T-shirt was found at the scene, covered in Watson's DNA. It was an instrumental piece of evidence, as Emma, Addy's daughter, told investigators that she'd made the T-shirt, effectively tying him to the killing. Tire marks at the scene matched Addy's vehicle, and an empty box of ammunition retrieved from the same area was identified by a firearms expert as matching ammo found in his home. During his trial, Addy, who maintained his innocence, put forward a story about an ex of Watson's who'd supposedly been stalking her and who could have been responsible for her death. No evidence was presented in support of his allegations. A prosecutor argued that Addy's actions destroyed 2 families, the family of his victim, Molly Watson, and his own. He was sentenced in July of 2021 to life in prison plus a decade. Thanks for watching. Would you break off your engagement if you found out your partner committed a string of unarmed robberies in their past? Let us know in the comments section below. Number 7, Kamari Belmont. On May the 1st of 2015, Kamari Belmont broke into a Chicago home with the intention of robbing it. When the homeowner put up a fight, Belmont shot him in the leg before fleeing the scene, only to rob yet another person just a few hours later that same day. When a bystander flagged down a police car that happened to be passing by, Belmont was arrested and charged with 2 robberies and attempted murder. About 3 weeks later, the man he'd shot in the leg died, and prosecutors tried to elevate the charge to murder. However, a paperwork loophole would lead to Belmont becoming a free man. It took the district attorney's office too long to raise the charges, and due to the state's speedy trial statute, the charge had to be dropped. The only charges that remained were the 2 robberies, out of which a friend of Belmont's bailed him with $10,000. Just minutes after walking out of jail, Belmont was gunned down and killed by a rival gang who drove by in an SUV in what was described as a well-planned hit. Number 6. Richard Rosario. On June the 19th of 1996, 17-year-old Jorge Collazo was shot and killed as he was walking in the Bronx with his friend Michael Sanchez. Collazo was reported to have been shot by a Hispanic man who'd gotten out of a car and briefly argued with him before delivering the fatal shot and speeding off in his car. Evidence would later suggest that the argument was related to drug activity, since a handgun and illegal substances were found on Collazo. When conducting their investigation, the authorities asked Sanchez and other witnesses if they'd seen anyone around when the crime took place, and asked them to take a look at photographs of people who'd been arrested at that precinct. Richard Rosario's photograph was among the many they sifted through, since earlier in his life, he'd been arrested for robbery and possession of stolen property. When Sanchez came across Rosario's photo, he identified him as the attacker. Rosario was subsequently charged with second-degree murder and went to trial. There was strong evidence to suggest that he wasn't linked to the shooting. It included witness testimony that he wasn't even in New York when it had taken place, but rather in Florida for the birth of his son. However, the prosecution discredited the witnesses as friends of Rosario's. On November the 23rd of 1998, Rosario was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. The fight for proving his innocence didn't stop, as Rosario appealed multiple times, yet despite having 7 more witnesses testifying to his presence in Florida at the time of the murder, 3 of which were given a polygraph test and passed, none of the appeals were successful. Further investigation found that the police and prosecution hid evidence which revealed that, in Sanchez's original statement, he said that he'd never even seen the gunman. In fact, he never even picked Rosario out of a lineup, and that he'd been subtly guided into selecting him as the culprit by the police. It wasn't until March the 23rd of 2016 that Rosario was finally cleared of all charges and released from prison. Number 5. Albert Flick. Kimberly Dobbie, a 48-year-old mother from Maine, was fatally stabbed 11 times in broad daylight outside of a laundromat on July the 15th of 2018. The attacker was 77-year-old Albert Flick, an ex-convict who'd become obsessed with Dobbie and stalked her. He allegedly followed the woman around town, but she rejected any type of relationship with him, leading to the violent attack which took place right in front of her children. Flick was convicted of murder and will spend the rest of his life behind bars. This wasn't his first time in jail for murder, as in 1979 he was convicted for the same crime. He fatally stabbed his wife 14 times, resulting in a 25-year jail sentence. Flick was released in 2004 but would go on to commit more violent crimes. In 2010, he was convicted of assaulting 2 women, and in spite of the prosecutor asking for 9 years in jail, the judge ultimately only sentenced him to 4 years, arguing that he would be too old to commit any more violent acts. It would prove to be a tragically misguided assessment. When he was released in 2014, Flick moved to Lewiston, Maine, where his infatuation with Dobbie began, ultimately concluding with her violent killing. Number 4. Johnny Frank Garrett. On Halloween night, 1981, Sister Tadia Benz, a 76-year-old nun, was abused and strangled to death at her convent in Texas. At the young age of 17, Johnny Frank Garrett was accused and convicted of the crime. He was put on death row, scheduled to be executed on January the 6th of 1992, but was given temporary reprieve by a Texan governor after Pope John Paul II asked for leniency on his behalf. Shortly thereafter, a hearing was held to determine whether Garrett's sentence should be reduced to life in prison or if he'd be executed. Ultimately, the death sentence was upheld by a 17-1 vote, and he was executed by lethal injection on February the 11th of 1992 at the age of 28. However, there'd always been shadows of doubt as to whether he was truly guilty. Garrett had insisted until the very end that he was innocent. Even after the execution, Texas attorney Jesse Quackenbush continued to investigate, insisting that Garrett had been a victim of poor defense attorneys and ruthless prosecutors. A break in the case wouldn't arrive until March of 2004. The cold case of another nun, 77-year-old Nani Bryson, who was killed in a chillingly similar manner. Just 4 months before Ben's resurfaced, new DNA evidence identified a man named Leoncio Rueda as Bryson's abuser and murderer. Police and prosecutors agreed that both deaths were so similar that they'd likely been committed by the same person. Rueda eventually confessed to Bryson's murder but didn't receive the death penalty. That would have involved an extended trial, which would have brought attention to Benz's case again and the unjust execution of Garrett. The state of Texas wasn't keen on publicly revealing that its legal system had potentially failed him. Number 3, Emma Pressler. On August the 6th of 2021, 19-year-old Texas teen Emma Pressler fled the scene of the crime after breaking into a home and setting a young couple on fire. The victims were 33-year-old Devin Graham and his girlfriend, Carissa Lindros, aged 26. They were able to escape the home, which was subsequently engulfed by flames as well, and were taken to the hospital with severe burns. A motive for the attack has yet to have been released, but one of Lindros's relatives did tell a media outlet that Pressler knew her. A few days after the incident, Graham died from his injuries. Lindros suffered severe burns to 70% of her body, but was expected to make a full recovery. Pressler was charged with murder while on the run from the police. She was found and arrested later in the month, on August the 26th. The teenager was charged with the murder of Devin Graham, but it wasn't in fact her first run-in with the law. Less than a year prior, in September of 2020, Pressler was charged with murder in the shooting of 20-year-old Sierra Rod, a woman suffering from cerebral palsy. Rod was in her bed when she was shot through her bedroom window. Pressler was allegedly at the scene with her then-boyfriend and 3 other people when they surrounded the house and fired 40 to 60 rounds into it. Police said that the group had meant to harm Rod's younger brother, who had some feud with them, with the young woman being caught in the crossfire. Pressler was said to have acted as the getaway driver, but a judge later determined that the evidence wasn't strong enough to link her to the crime and dropped the murder charge for that case. Today's topic was requested by Stalin the Man of Steel. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2, Courtney Hackney. 57-year-old Holly Barnett was beaten to death with a baseball bat in her Missouri home on May the 16th of 2017. The attacker was 32-year-old Courtney Hackney, reported as Barnett's niece, to whom she'd opened her home up in light of her transient status. Another family member living with Barnett came home and witnessed the horrific scene. As she tried to run out of the house, Hackney attempted to drag her back in, but fortunately, she was able to escape and call the police for help. Officers arrived at the scene and shortly thereafter found Hackney hiding in a nearby cemetery. She was charged with second-degree murder, but her 2018 court proceedings resulted in a mistrial when the jury couldn't come to a unanimous decision. A second trial set for 2019 was attempted, but due to several scheduling conflicts with the witnesses, they dismissed the case and planned to refile, distressed by it. They asked that the victim's identity remain private. At some point during the fishing trip, a 40-pound mackerel suddenly launched itself out of the water and onto the boat. In doing so, it speared into the victim's chest, inflicting major blunt force trauma from which he was unable to recover. Although deemed a freak accident, similar incidents have been reported in the past. Most notable was the case of Belinda Bingham, which occurred roughly 2 years prior and about 30 miles from Darwin. She was watching her husband fish when a 22-pound mackerel sprung from the ocean at a height of roughly 5 feet. Bingham was knocked off her feet upon being struck by it. Her husband turned around and saw her lying on the floor of their small boat with blood streaming from her neck. The leaping mackerel had somehow slashed her neck open. In spite of the deep wound, Bingham survived after being briefly hospitalized. Number 5, Alex Pullin. In July of 2020, a champion snowboarder drowned on Australia's Gold Coast, but the factors that led to his passing haven't definitively been established. 32-year-old Alex Pullin, a 2-time world snowboard cross champion and former Olympian, was spearfishing by himself off Palm Beach. A snorkeler spotted his body on the ocean floor and alerted rescuers. Lifeguards attempted resuscitation for 40 to 50 minutes, but Pullin didn't recover. He was an experienced fisherman and there were no injuries on his body. It's been reported that he wasn't using oxygen and that he'd been found wearing a weighted belt. The run-in theory was that Pullin had experienced a shallow water blackout. It happens when divers hold their breath underwater for too long, thus depriving the brain of oxygen and lose consciousness. It's been referred to as a leading cause of death among competent swimmers. The body's irresistible urge to breathe isn't satisfied, and thus they pass out. Some suspect that Pullin's self-determination as a top competitor may have played a factor in him holding his breath for too long. Number 4. Paul Buchan. In 2015, a fisherman from Peterhead, mainland Scotland's easternmost point, lost his leg in a freak accident. On June the 13th, Paul Buchan was on the Fruitful Vine fishing vessel in the North Sea, about 50 miles off the coast of Peterhead. Buchan passed the rope from his boat to another and accidentally stood on it. The two vessels started pulling away from each other and the rope wrapped around the 22-year-old's leg. He heard a snap and was overcome by a sudden surge of pain. Buchan's leg had been split in half. The Fruitful Vine's quick-thinking cook quickly applied a makeshift tourniquet to the leg in order to cut off circulation and prevent more blood loss. The boat's captain radioed the Coast Guard for help. Doctors advised not giving Buchan any painkillers. For an hour until a helicopter arrived to their location, Buchan had to wait and mentally push through the excruciating pain. He was airlifted to a hospital where doctors amputated his leg to the thigh as there wasn't enough muscle or tissue left to save the limb. In spite of his ordeal, Buchan felt extremely fortunate to have survived and to have the chance of celebrating his son's upcoming first birthday. Number 3. Randy Lanes. In May of 2015, a Hawaiian man was impaled by a swordfish while spearfishing in Honokoa Harbor off Kalioa Kona. 47-year-old Randy Lanes was highly experienced as for 18 years he'd worked as a captain for a charter fishing business. His sister-in-law described him as a tough guy by whom the entire harbor was intimidated. Lanes had jumped into the water with his spear gun after spotting the 6-foot broadbill swordfish, which rarely makes appearances in coastal waters. He'd successfully hit it, but as it was trying to escape, the spear's line got caught in the mooring anchor. The swordfish came back around at speed and stabbed Lanes in the chest with its 3-foot bill. He was pulled from the water and CPR was attempted, but his injuries ultimately proved fatal. Today's topic was requested by Instagram follower TDieShirt89. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below, or follow us on Instagram and reach out to us there. Number 2. Paul Nyamhansa. In 2019, a fisherman was gruesomely mauled by a crocodile in the village of Beatrice, Zimbabwe. 27-year-old Paul Nyamhansa and his brother Jeremiah, aged 19, were casting fishing nets near a dam some 34 miles from the nation's capital. The enormous beast emerged from the water and clamped its jaws on Nyamhansa's body. Any form of struggle proved futile as the crocodile pulled him under. After witnessing his brother getting attacked, Jeremiah went to get help. When the authorities arrived, there was nothing more to be done than recover Nyamhansa's remains from the water. He was taken to shore, where it was revealed that his genitals had been completely chewed off by the crocodile. Inspector Tendai Mwanza of the Mashonaland East Provincial Police confirmed the incident for a local media outlet, while the authorities reissued warnings about fishing in crocodile-infested waters. Number 1. Min Min Chiu. In June of 2021, Thai woman Min Min Chiu died following a tragic boating accident in Moreton Bay, Australia. At the time, 48-year-old Chiu was on a fishing trip with her husband Philip, aged 54. As they were returning to the dock, high winds and rough seas caused their Quintrex 440 Renegade boat to capsize. Philip held onto the overturned vessel for 12 hours before he was spotted in the water by a police helicopter. He was taken to a hospital where he began recovering from hypothermia. A frantic 3-second call to their family in which Philip had explained they were in trouble prior to being cut off, had raised the alarm and prompted the search. Unfortunately, by the time the Quintrex was spotted, Chu had become separated from her husband, following exhaustion and exposure. Neither was wearing a life vest. Chu's body was later recovered from the water. Her passing was mourned by family in Thailand, whom she'd been prevented from visiting for months due to pandemic travel restrictions. Thanks for watching. Would you rather attempt to spearfish a full-grown tiger shark or spend 5 minutes locked in a cage with an actual tiger? Let us know in the comments section below. Number 7. Michael Lawson. In 2018, 29-year-old Sarah Bramley broke up with her partner David Saunders and started dating someone new. Despite their relationship being over, Bramley reveled in the attention of both men and continued contact with Saunders in what can only be described as a love-hate relationship, with messages exchanged between them ranging from caring to downright personal abuse. Eventually, the toxic communication was taken too far when on July the 1st, after hours of furious texting, Bramley sent an explicit photo of her and her new lover, Michael Lawson, to Saunders. Scared that he would be enraged by the photo and come find her, Bramley then forced Lawson onto the street and locked herself in her home. The event unfolded as she'd expected, and Saunders had immediately grabbed a taxi to their location and went after Lawson. After a short chase, he killed him in cold blood with a single stab wound straight to his heart. Saunders was caught and pled guilty to murder. While he was sentenced to 22.5 years in prison, for his part, the court considered that Bramley had also played a role in the violent crime. On top of initiating an act she knew would enrage Saunders, as well as locking Lawson out, the court heard how she egged Saunders on by saying, "Feel free to smack him," after sending him an explicit photo. Bramley pleaded guilty to inciting or assisting in the murder of Michael Lawson and was given 4 months in jail.
Hi everyone, Carl here. If like me, you're a huge true crime fan and you need a break from watching all those they will kill you videos, then why don't you check out Magellan TV?
Magellan TV has a wide variety of true crime content, ranging from stories about paranormal crimes to portraits of the biggest criminals in history. But it doesn't stop with true crime. In total, Magellan TV has well over 3,000 documentaries that are directly available for you to watch without commercial interruptions. I was shocked and captivated when I watched On the Yeti Trail about the very possible existence of the abominable snowman. For once, myth meets science as you delve deeper into some of the footprints and DNA samples left behind by what some believe may be lurking closer than you think. And I'm excited to announce that we've partnered up with Magellan TV and that we can offer our loyal subscribers and viewers
1 month's free full membership.
If you like our content, you'll love their true crime collection. So be sure to take advantage of this unique offer. Number 6. Sean Dyson and Lucy Ann Rushton. Mother of 5 Lucy Ann Rushton was murdered by her husband, Sean Dyson, in June of 2019, after the man went into a jealous rage. Together for 4 years before getting married in 2010, the couple had recently split, with Rushton trying to finally put behind her what had been a toxic and violent relationship. The downward spiral of events started late in the evening on June the 22nd, when Rushton received a phone call from an ex-lover, which enraged Dyson. A child in the home at the time reported that Dyson told Rushton to swallow her ring because they were no longer together, and was woken up in the middle of the night to the sound of him beating her. The brutal and prolonged attack consisted of Dyson stomping, kicking and jumping on Rushton as she lay defenseless and half naked on her back. After calling the police in the early hours of June the 23rd, he disappeared for the next 10 hours and let paramedics find her lifeless body on the bed in her home in Hampshire, UK. Dyson went on to message police, family and friends to say that she died of drowning after he'd thrown water on her, but an autopsy revealed Rushton had a broken sternum, 2 collapsed lungs, and 37 fractures on her ribs. He was found later hiding in a cupboard and was charged with her murder. 2 weeks into his trial, he admitted guilt and was sentenced to a minimum of 17 years behind bars. Number 5. Keith Rizzo and Naomi Smith. Described as jealous and possessive by the judge presiding over his trial, 23-year-old Keith Rizzo was sentenced to 22 years in jail for brutally murdering his girlfriend, Naomi Smith, who had danced with another man at a pub night out. When the pair had started dating in early 2019, Rizzo already had a domestic violence conviction from an ex and continued down the same path with Smith, according to reports. A week before her murder, she confessed to a friend that he had choked her until she passed out and that he had broken and thrown things at her in the past. The night of the murder, a group of friends, including the couple, had gone down to a pub. Eyewitness reports stated that the night turned sour when Rizzo smashed a table worth of glasses and stormed out after spotting Smith dancing briefly with another man. Assuring a friend there that she'd be safe to go home, she went back to their shared apartment alone, only for Rizzo to show up later and break down the door. He played out his horrific attack with 2 knives, which he used to stab her 32 times, along with choking her and inflicting dozens of blows. The crime scene was described by paramedics like a horror film had taken place, as the carnage covered the entire kitchen. Immediately, Rizzo claimed 2 mysterious men had broken in and killed Smith over owed money while he was in the shower. The defense was questionable at best. CCTV failed to show anyone matching their description entering the building, and a number of women came forward to give evidence of his abusive behavior. Even a month after his conviction, a member of his defense team claimed that he still does not accept playing any part in her murder. Number 4, Sammy Lee Lodwick. A disturbing love triangle between a mother, her ex, and her daughter led to a gruesome murder in Swansea, South Wales, in 2019. After he was released from prison in 2015 for previously stabbing someone, Jason Farrell and Sarah Lodwick started an on-again, off-again relationship that ultimately didn't last. Unwilling to leave the family, the 49-year-old man began seeing Sarah's daughter, Sammy Lee, whom Farrell had known since she was a young schoolgirl. Despite seemingly having moved on with her younger counterpart, when Sarah got a new partner, Farrell spiraled into a jealous rage and attacked the man with a wooden pole. His rage unquenched by the attack, he then turned on 22-year-old Sammy Lee. He tied her up in his flat and proceeded to stab her face, throat, and chest 22 times. Before fleeing the scene, she died just 20 to 30 minutes before paramedics arrived to find her mutilated body covered by a duvet. Arrested later by armed police, Farrell asked for a pen and paper in which he chillingly confessed to having sliced her up. Even though he'd given a signed confession corroborated by physical evidence at his trial, Farrell pleaded not guilty on the basis that he'd been desensitized to violence after spending years in prison. The defense swayed neither the judge nor the jury, and Farrell was given a life sentence with a minimum of 26 years behind bars. Number 3, Carrie Farver and Shanna Gollier. In 2012, Dave Cooper moved to Omaha, Nebraska for work and started casually dating Shanna Liz Gollier, whom he'd met online. After leaving a long-term relationship prior to his move, he made it clear he didn't want to be exclusive, which wasn't an issue until 6 months later when he met Carrie Farver. The two got along really well, but mutually decided to keep it casual until only a few weeks down the line, Cooper received a breakup text from her number. She was reported missing a few days later by her mother. After last seen leaving his house by Gollier, the case went cold, but to everyone's surprise, her Facebook page was still active. For the next 4 years, Cooper would be continuously harassed by Farver, receiving 60-plus texts and 100-plus emails a day, despite him changing his number multiple times. Gollier, who he'd continued to see on occasion, also received messages, as well as Farver's mother and his ex, but still, no one had seen or even heard her voice. Threatening messages turned to vandalism when Cooper's work was targeted and Gollier's house was burned down, killing her family pets. Gollier had told police she suspected it was Farver, but the case remained cold until 2015, when a new team of investigators volunteered to take it on. Their investigation and intuition soon pointed them to Gollier, and using IP addresses and cell phone data, they discovered she had upwards of 30 fake emails using Farver's name and had a messaging app that allowed her to schedule future texts. The amount was shocking, with Gollier likely spending 40 to 50 hours a week impersonating Farver and stalking her contacts. In the end, despite graphic detailing of the murder by Gollier pretending to be someone else over email. No body nor any murder weapon was ever discovered. Gollier was still found guilty of first-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison in 2017, 5 years after it all began. Today's topic was requested by Carolina 2001. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2, Angelique Sutton. In 2015, 24-year-old Ashley Wade wanted a child so badly that she contrived a fake pregnancy and committed to convincing friends, family, and her boyfriend. Posting about it to social media, she reconnected with her former friend, Angelique Sutton, who was also pregnant at the time. They bonded over their pregnancies, and Wade invited Sutton over on November the 20th to give her a gift for her wedding, which was later that day. But the seemingly innocent invitation was actually a ruse, as Wade was jealous of Sutton's baby and wanted it for herself. Upon her arrival, Wade attacked Sutton, slashing her larynx so she couldn't scream before stabbing her face and neck upwards of 50 times. Keeping the injuries from the neck up, Wade then went for her abdomen and cut her baby out using a paring knife. Once in her arms, she wrapped it up, fed it formula, and pretended as though she had just given birth. Sutton bled out and Wade was immediately caught. In statements made by Wade in the aftermath, she claimed to truly believe that the baby once in her arms was hers and that she'd rescued it after her own imagined baby had died. The calculated attack by Wade and precise extraction kept baby Genesis alive. In a trial that lasted almost 2 weeks, she was convicted of second-degree murder and kidnapping and received a 40-year sentence. Number 1. Jonathan Amaral. Suspecting his wife Brittany of having an affair. After going through her phone in September of 2020, Armando Barron from New Hampshire, US, went on a jealous rampage. First choking out his wife until she passed out, he proceeded to lure her suspected lover, Jonathan Amaral, to a park, where he violently attacked him. Barron forced his wife to cut his wrists before fatally shooting him in the back of his car. Amaral's body was then taken to a campsite, where Barron allegedly forced his wife at gunpoint to decapitate the body before wrapping it in a tarp and hiding it. Amaral's body and Brittany were found together at the campsite by police when both failed to show up at work. Working with police, Brittany, her face covered with bruises, confessed to the gruesome chain of events. Armando was charged with capital murder and kidnapping, which carried a life sentence without parole, while his wife was indicted on 3 counts of falsifying physical evidence. Thanks for watching. Would you rather have an extremely jealous partner or have to wear perpetually wet socks for 5 years? Let us know in the comments section below. Number 8. Smiler Incident. Found at Alton Towers in the UK, the Smiler roller coaster owns the world record for most inversions, with riders being turned upside down 14 times. A major attraction at the park, the Smiler promised an exhilarating experience, but his reputation was marred by an incident that occurred on June the 2nd of 2015. On that day, 5 people were severely injured after a train carrying 16 passengers collided with a stationary empty train. The latter had been dispatched for a test run and stalled because of a gust of wind. The ride's automated block system consequently shut it down, but the park's engineers overrode it because they were unaware that the empty train was present on the tracks. The train carrying the passengers thus crashed into it. 2 riders seated at the front, 19-year-old Vicky Balk and Leah Washington, age 17, suffered horrific injuries. Balk's right leg and Washington's left leg required partial amputation. The latter's boyfriend was hospitalized with 2 broken kneecaps and extensive hand injuries. He would later remember, "I could just see blood, bone and flesh splattered on the carriage in front." Daniel Thorpe, age 27, was left with a collapsed lung and a fractured leg. Chanda Chauhan, seated on the Smiler's second row, needed surgery after having suffered blood clots and a damaged liver. The victims sued the park in the accident's aftermath, and its owners admitted blame. Balk and Washington, who'd struggled adapting to life as amputees, reportedly received a multi-million-dollar payout, while other victims were also compensated with 6-figure sums. Number 7. Anthony Tyson. In March of 2014, a Wisconsin man was left in critical condition following a roller coaster incident at the Mount Olympus theme park. 63-year-old Anthony Tyson was riding in the same cart as his wife, Kay, on the indoor Opa Twister Steel roller coaster. Looking back on the incident, Kay remembered that her husband's lap bar became unlocked as they went around the corner. He was launched into the air like a rag doll and impacted the concrete floor, sustaining devastating injuries. Tyson suffered 4 fractured vertebrae, broken toes and fingers, a dislocated shoulder, a shattered scapula, and life-threatening brain damage. He was bleeding from the head but breathing on his own when the emergency services arrived at the scene. Tyson spent several days in a coma, and while he did wake up from it, the long-term effects of his brain injury remain to be determined. A police officer inspected the ride and checked the 4 lap bars on Tyson's cart several times. 3 remained locked, but the 4th, where the victim had been sitting, came loose every time. Opa was permanently closed after the incident. Number 6. Rosa Esparza. In July of 2013, Rosa Esparza, age 52, fell to her death from the new Texas Giant roller coaster at Six Flags Over Texas in Arlington. Once the tallest wooden roller coaster in the world, the ride was modified between 2009 and 2011, a refurbishment in which steel tracks
Blast a joint.
We smoke that kush, that